I will start with a story. I want to say it's a funny story, but there's a good possibility nobody will laugh, so I'll just make it into a story. You probably have known it, and we'll use that story as a basis of our discussion also. There was a judge, and the judge was in the courtroom, and there was a case which was presented in front of the judge. So judge is there, judge's assistant is there. So he calls for the prosecutor, please present your case. The prosecutor lawyer gets up and he very strongly presents his part of the story. And the judge is very attentively paying attention. You're right. The assistant is writing down all the details. I says, Mr. Defense Lawyer, please present your defense now. So the defense lawyer is also very well prepared. He comes and even vehemently presents his part of the story. And he again, the judge is very carefully listening. You are right. Now the poor guy who is supposed to just follow the judge's orders is writing down, and he's just don't know what is the right part and which is not the right part. So he just asks, Judge, you said the prosecutor is like, defense is also right. How can both be right? Judge thinks for a moment and looks at him and says, you are right as well. You see, I knew nobody will laugh, but there is a fun part of it, but there is also something for us to look at it. And that is what this reading or the redeeming light topic is about, is the layers of truth. Layers of truth. We know light. Do we know darkness also? Yes. Not only I meant the experience of it, but there is day and there is night, isn't it? The word light itself exists because at times there is darkness as well, isn't it? So when we talk about this redeeming light, which doesn't have any dual part, it is not the same as we talk about when we talk about light versus darkness. A saint in Maharashtra, he was a guru of Shivaji. I don't know if you know history that much, but he wrote like Kabir many dohas, and then he said in one of those is, ask your mind to find out if there's any one person who is free from any displeasure, and it's only full of joys, full of pleasure. And again, so if you ask yourself this question to find out, you realize it is not. Our own experience of life is such that we do get both shares of pain and pleasure. Doesn't matter whether the poorest of the poor or richest of the richest, both will have their share of difficulties, both will have their share of joys as well. Now, how do we reconcile this, isn't it? On one side, we are talking about from joy I came, for joy I live. Now, that is my affirmation, but the life is bringing me both of the things, isn't it? So this is a dichotomy we need to resolve. And in that dichotomy, in that experience, that though my intention is to live in joy, life is bringing me both experiences. So how do I resolve it? And that understanding that life is going to bring us both of it lies a lot of truth. I talked about the layers of truth. What is the first level of truth? That I experience joy, I experience sadness, I experience light, I experience darkness, I experience good health, I experience sickness. Is that a wrong thing to say? No, there is truth to it, absolute truth to it. But then what is this redeeming light? Just Hari read that if there is light, no sickness can exist. Sometimes our mind makes a very beautiful romantic notion out of it, like when I have it, no more sickness, no more sorrows, no more pain. And that's a very wrong understanding. If many a times we sort of hold on to that and then say God is Satchidananda, it seems like an extremely good thing to find out. After that, no pain will come to us, but it is not so. Spiritual texts have said that the world is based on duality mane, we will get both of it. We will get both of it. Now this sounds discouraging, is it? What's the whole point of all these things if you can't get rid of pain? And that comes to the next part. Even if it sounds discouraging, when we groundedly understand this part, that we will get both of it. As long as we are living in this world, living in this body, have this mind, we will be exposed to these experiences. And when we realize that what we're seeking is not out there, we try to look more. Let's take a simple example. No, what is happening right now? If whenever the satsang is over, if somebody asks you a question, okay, how was your morning? You say, oh, very nice. What happened? You say, oh, Hari did a great reading. Amit did a chant and he gave a talk. Deepika was there doing the work behind the camera and I was listening. Is this a right story? More or less, this is what we will tell. You will tell, oh, I was very inspired, or you can say, I was very bored. Either way, you will have one version of it, and this is a story. And none of us will say this is a wrong story or incomplete story. But it is an incomplete story, isn't it? As a spiritual practitioner, now let's look at this story a little bit more deeper. What actually is happening at this moment? You may say Amit is speaking, but can we say a little bit more deeper than that? If like in sometimes you use this Photoshop features or imaging features, like blur the images so that you cannot figure out which face is this. Blur the voice so that you cannot identify. What is happening is that some energy is flowing through this form and saying something to you. Same energy read something through Hari. And then the same energy is now inside you and trying to receive. Now, we just made so many names. There was Hari, there was me, there was Deepika, and then there was you. Now, when we transform this conversation in the realm of only energy, there are 4 different things or only one? And in that experience, now sometimes we use this word. What is happening is this energy is talking to another energy. God talking to God. We do this Thursday book reading sometimes, and one of our Brahmachari brothers have started joining us, Brahmachari Jaidev. And he always is sort of, you ask him a question, he always has this one-liner. I said, like, Jaidev, what is happening right now? And he says, God is talking to God. And while it's just a good thought, if you pay attention to that, isn't that what is happening right now? There was a time I was in Palo Alto, and again, as I said, this is our normal way of expression, isn't it? Many of us, we know each other very personally. So the moment we get together, all of a sudden there is a very personal conversation. We call it social or whichever it is. So there is a personal interaction going on, and in that, sometimes there's a dimension we sort of miss out. So in Palo Alto, again the same thing, I was there, and most of them were very good friends of mine. So one time Asha Naya Swami Asha, who is the spiritual director of Palo Alto, she said, we'll do an exercise today. We're going to greet each other. We're going to go and really take time to meet each other. We do not need to make any conversation, but just look deeply into each other's eyes and try to make a connection. And that's all the instructions were, and we started doing it. And that was such a profound experience. You see, the immediate urge to actually make a conversation, because I had I had things to talk to every one of them, but we stopped that part. And now I'm looking at the same person, but now into the eyes. It sort of gave a feeling, now what is there more than the form that I am very used to, more than the personality that I am used to. What is there inside that body? And they are looking at the same thing. So for many of us, it was a very profound experience. Another way to look at it is like, if I ask you what are your boundaries? Where do you begin? Where do you end? This seems like a very simple question, isn't it? What kind of a question is that? I precisely know my boundaries. No? Like, this is sort of where I begin. This is where I end. What kind of a question is that? There are some spiritual questions which are difficult, but this doesn't seem very difficult. This is sort of where I end. And that's the space, and there somebody else begins. But then I ask you, the one who resides in this body, where does that begin? Where does that end? When we talk about the energy which flows, where it is, what is the shape of it? What is the confinements of it? When we ponder around that, again, this is not a question that you respond in a verbose way, but when you have time, just sit by yourself and then ponder around these questions. You don't need to read anything because it's right here. Whatever is in this body, whatever is in your body is right there. It is not going to evaporate. When it evaporates, that's the end of it. But sit by yourself and see if you can figure out a particular shape, particular form. What preferences does that one which resides in this body have? What are the preferences? And that is when we contemplate like that, we come closer to our own true reality. The redeeming light, as we talk about, it is in presence of that real reality. We talk about, I mentioned, like when we use this word I, it is a lot about personality. You see, what does it constitute personality? We say, oh, I'm a kind-hearted person. We also say, oh, no, I get angry very quickly. Excuse me. But what is there about the heart which is to be kind? No? Nature of heart is kind, isn't it? What we are saying when we say I'm kind-hearted is I've removed all the conditioning which sort of shadows the light which was already there. When we say I get very angry, we know there is some more layers that we need to remove. A personality is just, what do you say, a glorified version of ourselves. And sometimes we try to glorify it even further. We feel that I'm going to make a best version of myself. Yogananda ji clearly said, he said, I have killed Yogananda a long time ago. Killed. He didn't use any polite word. He never uses any polite words anyway. But killed. If that's a very strong word, use the word like dropping the personality. You see, the moment we drop or we can remove the personality, that natural right which is already there, the nature of heart shines through it. And it is not just theory. Every time when we try to do that consciously or subconsciously, you have that experience. One of the most popular events at Ananda Delhi here, we haven't been doing it for last couple of years for obvious reasons, is spiritual fair. And many of you probably have participated in that. Even Hari, who has like a huge resistance in any physical activity, or I would say inclination to be still on his chair, on that day you will see a lot of activity through him. This is on a lighter note. We all thought that Hari should be doing some physical activity. Hari was not in agreement with that, but we thought. So we gave him this, Fitbit or the armband. Now, we thought that will work as a reminder for him, no? Like you look at it, oh my goodness, I have done nothing today, and then he will start walking. But he take pride in saying, you see, I was so still today, only 300 steps. But even that Hari, on that particular day of spiritual fair, his count will go into 20,000, even more. Those were very beautiful days. And again, if you go back to the time when you participated in that, you entered through this door, you see our dearest Vedji, and then, he's not there with us, but you can still visualize. I think that's the only place where I see him. And then Devadikari and some others that was a standard crew who were there pretty much starting from 9 o'clock till end of 6. Then there will be Surina, running around making sure all those 400 souls will be coming, feeding. You will see Rachana and some others greeting, and then just every day just doing the trafficking duty. The teachers there were lots of classes, but every teacher will also have different roles to play. And then in the midst, whenever there is a class, they will sort of huddle in the Akeshwa's room and then try to just center themselves in the last moment centering before they go into that class. Everyone was participating. Now, many people who participate on outside of Sangha, they have a very large presence, much big companies they run, many big responsibilities they have. On that day, few things are left outside. There's a big place where you see lots of shoes. Even people who are coming, all the volunteers, it's kept. And it feels like all our personalities, our conditioning is also kept outside. Everybody on that day seems to be just doing their best. You'll see, you go back and Shailesh is just chanting this heck out from 9 to 6 o'clock. Doesn't matter who is listening to that, he is in his own ecstasy. Doesn't stop. Doesn't stop. It doesn't matter to him what is actually happening. By the end of this very long day, I think most of you probably will see, bodies are super tired. I remember, like whenever you sit down, I would feel, this is good. Back says thank you. It didn't matter. It goes on and on. Around 7:30 when the day is over, you look at all the people who are standing there. You can see that there is a tiredness. They are tired. It's been a long day. But just the way Ashaji was taking, if you look beyond the bodies, you see that glow, that joy, which is felt by every one of us. Master, when he would say, he looked at his disciple and said, all I see is light. And on those days, we sort of we look at each other and we see what Master saw, because that's all remains of us. I feel those days are like a very holy days, or it's also a day of holy. What gets burned, though, it's not just wood, but this our conditioning, our personalities are all just burned. What remains is just that beautiful light. What do we do on that day so special that this happens? Really nothing. And it is not that I am saying it. You do it. Every one of us have experienced it. The spiritual fair needs to happen only on one day. The next day all of a sudden becomes less spiritual. Which part of our life is spiritual and which part is not? Coming to the temple is spiritual. Going to the office isn't. Going for a walk isn't. Talking to someone in a casual conversation isn't. Everything is, isn't it? And when we understand that, we can make spiritual fare, the attitude with which we go for spiritual fare, just the only natural way for being, for every day. Because in that, the light shines, and this light doesn't have its door. There is no darkness which is for that. And in that light lies our redemption. That is the day. That is the moment when we are completely free. Free from our own conditioning, and only thing which shines through us is that light of God. Joy to you.